We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Tesam and Beis in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 79b. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas amoraim between Rav and Shmuel. Let's say you have a situation where you inspect a girl, you find her to be a bogeris. So do we assume because she's a bogeris now, she was also a bogeris earlier that day? Rav said that we do say that. Rav said, Harei bogeris lefanenu. She's a bogeris in front of us now, therefore we assume she was a bogeris earlier. The nafkamina in this particular case was that the father earlier in the day had given her away in Kiddushin. That's not going to be effective because we assume she was a bogeris at that point in time, and therefore he had no rishus over her. But Shmuel says it's an actual genuine suffix. She's a bogeris in front of us now, but maybe she wasn't a bogeris earlier in the day, and therefore maybe the father's Kiddushin was a good Kiddushin. And so the Gemara in the previous Talmud said that we should say that this machlokas Rav and Shmuel is actually a machlokas Tanoim in the following brisa. The brisa says, Mi motzi miyad mi, you have an argument over here, who gets the property, who gets that particular property, who takes from whom. We'll see Rashi in a moment in terms of what the case is, but in any case the brisa says, Hu motzi miyadam below raya, he can take from them without bringing any proof. V'hein ein motzi miyadam below raya, but they're not able to take from him without a proof. They need evidence. Again, we'll see Rashi in a moment who is arguing. Divrei Rabbi Yaakov, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Nosson says, Imbarihu, if he's a healthy person, Olav Lahavi Raya Shoya Shchimera, then he has to bring a proof that he was a Shchimera at the time that he gave away his property. V'im Shchimerahu, but if right now he's a Shchimera, so Aleim Lahavi Raya Shabari Hoya, so then it's upon them to bring a proof that he is a Bari. You can already see from over here, Rabbi Nosson's phrasing is that we're following the Chazaka, the Hashta. It already sounds like Rav, and therefore the Gemara is suggesting that Rav is following Rabbi Nosson's opinion, and that Rabbi Yaakov would be like Shmuel. And Rashi explains what the case is, mi motzi miyad mi, who takes away from whom. The case is as follows. Hakosev nechasav la'acherim v'lo shayir klum. Case is, let's say a person, he writes all of his property over to others, essentially gives away all of his property and doesn't leave anything behind for himself. So the halacha is that in such a situation, it depends if he's a shchiv meira, is he somebody that's on his deathbed, or is he a bari, is he a healthy person? The kaimalon, so the halacha is as follows. If somebody gives away all of his property, doesn't leave anything for himself, the halacha is b'shchiv meira she'ein matanos matanim amad. If he's a shchiv meira when he did that, and then he gets better, so then his property is not given away, he actually keeps his property. The goli daite midalo shayir midi, because from the fact that he left nothing over, it's clear the mitzvah machmas misahaya. He was just doing this because he thought he was going to die, and therefore, if it happens to be he gets better, that whole matana is nothing. Now, if at the time that he said this, and he was giving away all his property, he was totally healthy, so then matana, so then his matana certainly is a good matana. So now there's an argument, because now he's a healthy person, and he's saying, he's saying, no, when I gave away all my property to you, I was a shchimera. But they argue and they say, no, you were healthy at that time. So mi motzi nechasim miyad mi. So who's the one that gets the property from the other one? Meaning to say, who really is entitled to this property? And so the Brisa says, who motzi miyadim? According to the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov, he takes from them. Meaning, im amdu ve'achziku b'nechas, meaning even if they actually took the property, so it's actually in their possession, he doesn't need any proof. He gets it. He gets to take that property from them. Ve'in sarach lavi raya shaya shchimera. He doesn't even need to bring a proof that he was a shchimera. Ve'afilu hu bari achshav. And even if right now he's healthy, b'shas chazar lo armina midahashta bari meikara b'shas matana nami bari. We don't say, well, since right now he's healthy, therefore earlier when he gave the matana he was also healthy. We do not say that according to Rabbi Yaakov. And Rashi continues, Rabbi Nosson says, no, in Bari hu achshav, if right now he's a Bari, b'shas chazar, the time he's trying to retract, he wants the stuff back, all of lahavi raya, then he does need to bring a proof that he was a shchimera at that time. We follow the chazak of right now. V'lo ma'asin, if he doesn't bring mechaskinon like hashta, we assume that just like right now he's a Bari, he was a Bari earlier, and therefore he loses all the property. V'hainu kirav, and it seems as though Rabbi Nosson is following the opinion of Rav, and so that's exactly what the Gemara says. Name a Rav do Amar Rabbi Nosson. Let us say that Rav is says like Rabbi Nosson. Ushmuel do Amar Rabbi Yaakov, and Shmuel follows the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov in this brisa. And the Gemara continues, Amar lach Rav. Rav will say to you, Ano da Amri afilu Rabbi Yaakov. I can even follow the Tana Rabbi Yaakov. Adkan lo kam Rabbi Yaakov hasam. Rabbi Yaakov only said what he said, meaning to say he only said in the particular situation by this individual who's claiming he was a shchimera. He says that individual wins. The ikol meimar hamid maman al al cheskasa. The reason why is because there was also a chazaka of the mammon. We know that this person owned the property earlier. He was the one giving it away, and therefore you have a logic to say that he should win the case. Aval hacha, but over here, when you're talking about the situation of a bogeres, mi neima hamid guf al cheskasa, do you say in such a situation that there's a chazaka on the body of this girl that it was one way or the other way? There is no chazaka in this case, and that's why Rav would tell you that in this particular case, we would follow the chazaka dehashta. We would follow the fact that she's a bogeres now, therefore we presume that she was a bogeres earlier. As Rashi over here explains, hasam v'kevon desveikuhu, meaning to say again, since you have a situation of doubt who really gets the property by this individual who's claiming he was a shchivmeira, amrinan hamin maman al chazaka, so we should give the money to its original owner, to the original person who had the possession. Shayam muchzik bakodem matana zu shayasafik. In other words, we know that beforehand this person certainly owned the property. He's the one that was giving it away, and that's why it is that Rabbi Yaakov says he wins the case. But over here, Mikol Ameimer Hamed Haguf al Cheskasa, but over here by the girl, is there a chazaka over here in this situation? But to have a nara, meaning there's no chazaka that she was a nara. We have no idea. Yomad Mishalim Shis, because on the day of the completion of the 6 months, you can't say there's a chazaka that she was a nara. Ein bo lo cheskas naras v'lo cheskas bagras. According to Rashi, that's the whole point of the machlokas. There is no chazaka one way or the other on that final day. She doesn't have a chazaka of being a nara. She doesn't have a chazaka of being a bogeris. She's essentially, it's a clean slate. Shayom hi omedis lishtanos. This is the day that she's supposed to be switching over from naras to bagras. And the Gemara continues, Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel will say, again, Shmuel is the one that did not follow the chazaka dehashta by the case of the bogeres. Shmuel will say, Anad da'amri afilu Rabbi Nassan, I can follow even Rabbi Nassan. Rabbi Nassan also would agree by the case of the bogeres not to follow the chazaka dehashta. The only reason he followed the chazaka by the case of this individual who's healthy, who's trying to claim he was a shchiv meira earlier, and Rabbi Nassan is saying he can't claim that because right now he's a bari in front of us. Arkan lo kam Rabbi Nassan hasam. Rabbi Nassan only said that over there to kuli alma bechezkas brim kaimi, because in general everybody has a chazaka that they were healthy. That's a general chazaka in the world. And man dukamapik nafshe me chazaka. This person is coming and trying to take himself out of that chazaka. He's trying to claim that he was a shchiv meira earlier when he gave away the matana. Havelei lo esuye raya. So he has to actually bring a proof to that. If he doesn't bring a proof, then he's going to lose the case. That's why Rabbi Nassan follows the chazaka of right now that he's healthy in that particular case. But over here, if we're going to say in this case of the girl who's a bogeris right now that earlier she might have been a nara, are we? If she's a nara, if we're saying she might be a nara, is that taking her away from any kind of presumption, from any kind of chazaka? Of course not. And that's why in this situation Shmuel says, and again Rabbi Nassan would also say that it is a genuine suffix, as Rashi says, "Mi mifka nafshe me chazaka kolomar ki misafkinan la benara." What the Gemara means to say is, again, when we're saying there's a suffix here that she might be a nara, mi mafkinan la me chazaka harbe naras biyom mishlam shis. Are we taking her away from some kind of presumption? Of course not. There's many girls would be a nara at that point in time on that day when they're finishing the 6 months, and so therefore there'd be nothing wrong to say that in this particular case, like Shmuel, that it's a genuine suffix. And the Gemara continues, Neima kahani tanoi. Again, let's say the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel is like the following machlokas tanoim in this brisa. This brisa is going to essentially be an identical case to Rav and Shmuel. Kitcha via bederech. Let's say her father was mekadesh her on the road earlier in the day. V'kitcha atzma b'ir, and then she was mekadesh herself a little later in the day in the city. Again, identical to the machlokas Rav and Shmuel earlier. V'harei bogeres, and right now she's a bogeres in front of us, and we actually have a machlokas in brisas. Tanachada harei bogeres lefoneinu. One brisa says she's a bogeres now. We assume she's a bogeres earlier, like Rav. V'tanya ida cheshin on the kiddushay shneim. And there's another brisa that says exactly like Shmuel that we have to be concerned for both keddushins, and we treat it like a suffix. My lav is it not chad kerav v'chad k'Shmuel. One brisa is following Rav, and one brisa is following Shmuel. It certainly seems that that is the case. And the Gemara says, lo, not necessarily. Idi v'idi k'Shmuel. You actually could say that both brisas are like Shmuel, but Shmuel, when he says it's a suffix, there is a scenario where he would admit that we assume she's a bogeres. Kan b'mechashaso, kan b'shein mechashaso. It depends if she herself is claiming, if she's contradicting him and claiming that she's a bogeres with certainty. Meaning to say, Shmuel might admit and say as follows. In a situation where the girl herself says that she is telling us, she says that she was a bogeres earlier in the day as well, that she had those simonim, she had those those signs of maturity, so then Shmuel actually would agree with Rav and say that Harei Bogeres Lefanenu, she's a Bogeres now, and we assume she's a Bogeres earlier. And Shmuel, since Shmuel admits in that situation, that could be what the Bryce itself is talking about. When the Bryce says Harei Bogeres Lefanenu, it's talking in a situation where she herself is saying with certainty that she was a Bogeres earlier. But the Gemara says if that's the case, v'neima mi demasnisa lo pligi. But 1 second, if we're now saying that these two brises don't really argue with each other, because one brise is talking where she's making a claim and the other's not, so amoroi nami lo pligi. Why are we even saying it's a machlokas amoroim between Rav and Shmuel? Let's say again that Shmuel and Rav actually agree completely. Maybe Shmuel was talking about a situation where she's not making any claim. Maybe Rav is talking about a situation where she is making a claim. Why are we assuming that there's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel? And again, what the Gemara is essentially asking is because what the Gemara just said is that Shmuel admits to Rav in a situation where she makes a claim. But the Gemara is still asserting there's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel in a situation where she's not making any claim. Where she's not making any claim, Shmuel says it's a suffix, and Rav says even in that case, we say that she's a Bogeres Lefanenu. Why is that the case? Why are we assuming the Amoraim are arguing if the Brises we're saying might not be arguing? But the Gemara says to that, no, you have to say the Amoraim are arguing. V'tizbra, is it logical, is it possible to say that the Amoraim, Rav and Shmuel, are not arguing? We had the following incident, Rav Yosef Breder of Menashe mi Devil, because there was a case of Rav Yosef, the son of Rav Menashe from Devil, Avad Uvda Kavase de Rav. He actually paskin like Rav in one particular case. V'ikbet Shmuel, and Shmuel got upset about the fact that he followed Rav. V'yamar, and Shmuel said when he heard about this psak of Rav Yosef Breder of Menashe, when he said as follows, Kuli alma kaili le bekavazuta, everybody has a small measure of wisdom. V'haimid Rabbanan, and this rabbi over here thinks kaili le bekava rabba, he thinks he has a great measure of wisdom, meaning Shmuel essentially said about this psak halacha, because Rav is really saying a leniency that with certainty we know 100% that she was a Bogeres earlier. So Shmuel say, how could he be so certain? Shmuel says, how is he able to be so sure that this girl was a Bogeres? He got angry. And the problem is, as the Gemara says, Visalka daitach lo pligi. Now, if you think really that Rav and Shmuel weren't even arguing, they were talking about two separate cases, why is he getting so angry? There's a simple answer. Maybe when he paskin like Rav, that was when she was contradicting, when she was saying with certainty that she was a Bogeres, there would have been nothing to get angry about. But it must be that's not the case. It must be what was happening was there is a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel in a case where she is not saying anything. In that case, Shmuel says it's a suffix, and Rav still says with certainty that she's a Bogeres, and that's why Shmuel was getting angry and saying, how does he know with certainty that this girl is a Bogeres? And the Gemara continues, Amar le Mar Zutra Ravashi, Mar Zutra said to Ravashi, Hachi Amar Amemar, Amemar says as follows, Hilchasa Kevase de Shmuel, the halacha is like Shmuel, Ravashi Amar, but Ravashi says, Hilchasa Kevase de Rav, that the halacha is like Rav, and the Gemara concludes, V'hilchasa Kevase de Rav, that the halacha follows Rav. Again, we say, Harehi Bogeres Lefanenu, she's a Bogeres now, therefore we assume that she was a Bogeres earlier. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Misha Yatzahu ve'ishto leMedinas Hayam. Let's say a person leaves with his wife, they go far away to Medinas Hayam, Uvahu ve'ishto uvanav, and then he returns, he comes with him and his wife and his kids. V'yomer, and he says, Isha sheyatza simi leMedinas Hayam, that woman that I left with when I went on the trip, Harehu hizu, that's this woman, that we're already able to verify, we recognize this woman, ve'elu baneh, and these are her children. The point is he's making a claim that these are her kids. We've already checked that the woman has proper lineage when they got married, and therefore he's claiming the children also have proper lineage. Let's say they're daughters, they can marry Kohanim, etc. So the Mishnah says, Ein tzarich lavi raya lo ala isha v'lo ala banim. He doesn't have to bring any proof for the woman or for the children. As the Gemara will explain, we're talking about a situation of young children who clearly are following after their mother. It's obvious that they consider this woman to be their mother, and the point of the Mishnah is we assume that indeed these are the children of this mother, and they therefore are considered to have good lineage. Mesa, now let's say he comes back from the trip, and he says she dies. The Elu Banan, he says again, these are her children. So do we have to check that, we have to do an investigation and make sure that these are her children and they have good lineage? So the halach is, Mevi Raya ala Banim. So the halach is, he does have to bring a proof in terms of the children to verify that these children are of good lineage. Ve'eno, maybe Raya ali, she doesn't have to bring any Raya when it comes to the wife. As Rashi over here says, Mevi Raya al Habonim, Shayu b'nei Osa Isha. Again, he has to bring a proof for the children, that they were the children of this woman that he says died. The point is, he doesn't have to bring a proof that that woman that he married was miyuchas, that she had good lineage. We already checked on the wife when they actually had gotten married. So we already know the wife is kosher, so to speak. She has good lineage. It's just a question to make sure that these are the children of that particular woman. That's what the Mishnah means to say when it says you don't have to bring a proof when it comes to the woman. And the Mishnah continues, Isha nasasi b'medinas hayam. Now let's say he comes back and he says, I married a woman b'medinas hayam when I was far away. I married a woman. Harei hizu, this is the woman that I married b'medinas hayam. V'elu bana, and these are her children. So then maybe ra'yo isha. So then the Mishnah says he does have to bring proof about the lineage of the woman. We don't know this woman. It didn't happen over here when he got married. He got married in Medinas Hayam. But again, vein sarach lavi ra'yo labanim. You don't have to bring any proof on the children. It's clear that these children are the children of this particular woman, and therefore 100% we can assume that if she's of good lineage, they are of good lineage as well. Meisa ve'elu banan. Now let's say again he comes back, he says, I married a woman in Medinas Hayam, and she already died, and these are her kids, so now we know nothing about any of them, so tzarach lavi ra'yo lo'isha v'yala banim. Then of course you have to bring proof regarding both the woman and the children, meaning to say you have to prove that that woman that he says he married Medinas Hayam, you have to prove she has good lineage, and then you also have to prove that these are the children of that woman. And the Gemara says, as we noted, Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna says, V'kulan b'kruchem achareh. All of these cases in the Mishnah, when we're talking about children, we're talking about young children who are clearly attached to this particular woman. They're acting as though this is their mother, and that's why we assume again, if you verified the lineage of the mother, so then the children are fine as well. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Isha nasasi b'medinas hayam. If a person says, I married this woman when I was in Medinas Hayam, maybe ra'ya l'isha, he has to bring evidence, he has to bring proof with regards to the woman in terms of her yichus. Ve'in sarach lavi ra'ya labanim, he doesn't need to bring proof in terms of the children, because again, if it's clear the way the children are acting, that this is their mother, once he verifies the lineage of the mother, so the children are fine. And the Brisa clarifies, just like we clarified above, who maybe ra'ya l'gedolim, he does have to bring proof on the children that are adults, because it's not clear once they're adults whether or not they're actually following the mother. When we say that he doesn't have to bring proof with regards to the children, that's specifically, he doesn't have to bring proof with regards to the children that are ketanim, that are minors. It's obvious that this is their mother. Again, once he verifies the lineage of the mother, it's clear that these young children are following the mother. And the Brisa clarifies, when is all of this true? B'isha achas. This is true. Let's say the person says, I married one woman. Aval b'shtei nashim. Let's say you have a situation where a person says, I married two women in Medinas Hayam, and now he's saying one of those women died, and again, this particular woman, he's coming back with one of the wives, and he's saying this is the children of the wife, so there already maybe ra'ya lo'isha v'ala bonim ala gadolim v'ala katanim. In such a situation, you have to bring a proof both for the woman and for the children, whether they're adults or whether they're younger. And Rashi explains, B'isha achas shamar isha achas nasasi. If when he comes back from Medinas Hayam, he said, I only married one woman, then you just have to verify the woman once it's clear that these children are acting like this is their mother. Let's say he says that actually I married two wives. He says one of my two wives died, and these over here are the children of this particular mother. So then maybe then he has to bring a proof in terms of her shehim yuches, that she has proper lineage, and he has to bring a proof with regards to the children that these are actually her children, whether they're older, whether they're younger. Rashi says even if the younger children are following this woman, it seems like that's their mother, but the Shema Baneh Shel Chaver Tahayu V'Gidaltan, maybe these actually were the children of the other wife. The other wife might have died, and this woman might have actually raised them. We don't actually know that this is their mother just because they're acting like that. Once he tells us that there were actually two wives, it is quite possible that this is not their actual biological mother, and if it's not their biological mother, that's something we have to verify, therefore, in terms of their lineage. And the Gemara continues, Amar Reish Lakish says, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Amud Aleph.